My name is Matt Smith, and we've got Ashley Tarr, John Ziller, Jimmy Spieldener, and Mike Colburn, all obviously are elite producers. To be an elite producer, you've got to write $40,000 of volume in two months in a row. And so this is our sales panel for this conference. So we're going to talk about what it takes to write $40,000 in a month. What's the difference between somebody that writes $10,000 in a month, $20,000 a month versus $40,000 a month? And so I'm excited about who's on here. These are some of the elite in Symmetry. All have been top producers on leaderboards, some of them #1 in the company for the year. And so we're going to dig in. We're going to start with you, Jimmy. You mentioned in your talk that when you first got into Symmetry, you were not a top producer. In fact, you said that I think you used the word sucked. So
Nice of you.
And you said that after conference, it was really conference that you said was that catalyst that made that change. And I remember when this happened. You were, I think, $12,000, $13,000, $15,000 per month producer. You were frustrated with those results, and you came out of conference. And I remember you doubled, tripled your production that very next month, and really never looked back. You went from that to, I think that year you won. I think it was that year you won November to Remember. And before conference, you wondered if this was even going to work out. So I'd love to understand, what was it about conference? Was it something you learned? Was it, what was it that triggered that and caused you to go from a bad producer in your mind to a good producer?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I'm just honored to be up here with the quality of people that are sitting here. So I appreciate you having me. The truth is so 90 days in was my first conference, and those 90 days I had written somewhere like 18 or 16,000, 3 months combined. And then the 2 weeks out of conference, I wrote 26,000 the 2 weeks. So the thing that I really attest that to is I was a hustler, I was a worker, and I was working crazy. I was driving all over the place. I was doing a lot of the system, but the part that was missing was the belief. Like, I really still questioned Symmetry, the owners, Delaney, Pritchett, my hierarchy. I still was feeling them out and I really liked them and I wanted it to work, but I just didn't know that I wasn't fully bought in. And so conference, I think there was a point in conference where I was sitting next to a girl I was with for several years, and I turned to her and I said, I don't care what I have to do. If I have to take out a $50,000 business loan, I'm all in. And just really aligning my belief with my work ethic, because I could work, and there's so many people that don't understand what they're doing wrong. They're working, but they're not fully bought in. They're not fully committed. And so that it's hard to even explain. It's just that commitment happened inside of me. I don't really know how that happened, but I immediately came out the next week and I just had a different stance, a different, like my flag was planted. And so I think that really, there's a reason why belief is the #1 core, cornerstone that we have. So I think that the belief lined up with my work ethic, and I finally got to kind of to align the two and really give it a full effort.
Yeah, I remember your mindset before comments was really proving the system wrong.
Yeah.
So you were trying to do everything to say, okay, they're telling me this, but I don't really believe it.
Yeah, I wanted to, because I hated the restaurant business. And what's crazy is I was within minutes of signing a couple $100,000 liability, loan to run a restaurant. And the crazy thing is we're looking back, and me and this girl were talking about how she can be the server manager and make an extra $500 a week, and I can be run the kitchen and be the cook and save $500 a week. And so here I am freaking auctioning our lives for $1,000 a week. I'm just so grateful that didn't happen. But I think people come into this and they treat it, instead of that way, like a business, they treat it more like it's a job, and it's just, it's just like you go and you show up and you get paid, and that's just not the truth, as we all know.
Anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's, I love what you said too, just with the idea of even if I have to pull out a $50,000 line of credit, this is a business, and that's what I think people have to really understand, right? #1. Because I came in here and, the saying, I was so broke I didn't have a pot to, blank in and a window to throw it out of. And so my back was so far against the wall, but I didn't have that, that plan B idea in mind. It was just whatever it took to make this work, and just have like that tenacity of like keep failing. All right, I got it, finally. So I think it's awesome.
I think if you make up your mind that this is it and no matter what, like the failures are less hurtful. Like it's less of a problem to go. It's just like, okay, that's part of it. I got to get there. I'm going there. I know I'm going there. I got to get there. And whatever happens along the way, I can ride it out because I know I'm going there. It's just keeping that vision. And I don't think that I had that coming in here. I think Symmetry was a big part of that, and hearing and seeing and getting to hear from people like this, at that first conference. And, so many people go to their first conference, I'm going to be on stage. Don't say it, just prove it. Prove it with your actions.
I've heard that the most expensive thing somebody has is their ego. And, for someone like me, I was fortunate enough to have gone through enough challenges and ups and downs. I was in the worst place that I've ever been in for a good thing because my ego, was gone at that point. I didn't have time to prove the system wrong or had to make sure the system worked. So, it all starts with your mindset. And if you don't have the right mindset, then nothing else matters at that point if you don't have the right mindset. And I forgot to mention that we've got another panelist, which is Nate Offord. He's joining us virtually. And Nate has been somebody that I don't think he's ever had a month where he didn't produce $40,000 in a month. His very first month in Symmetry, which was his very first month in insurance, he produced $50,000 his first month, $85,000 his first 7 weeks in the business. And that doesn't happen accidentally. You've got to be very intentional, which is one of the things we're going to talk about later, is how intentional on what, on what things specifically to get to that $40,000 a month. And so, Nate, I'm going to ask you the next question. When you came in here and you said, okay, I'm going to do $50,000 this month. That was a goal that you had set, and you said, I'm going to achieve this no matter what. And so first question, I'd like to understand, why was that so important to you? Because a lot of people come in here and they say, well, I'm going to get my feet wet. I'm going to learn how to do this. And they don't really set a clear goal. They're just going to learn how to do it. And you didn't have that mindset. You had, you said, I'm going to do $50,000. And you also looked at purchasing leads as a way to buy your production. And I remember you didn't have that mindset of, okay, I'm going to buy my first set of leads and see what I can get out of it. And if it doesn't work, if I don't reach that goal, then, oh, well, better luck next week. You continued to invest in leads as much as you had to in order to reach that goal. And so I'd love for you to talk about, A, why was that $50,000 in a month so important? And B, expand a little bit more on that mindset of buying your production.
Thank you, Matt. I'm very honored and privileged and excited to be on this virtually with you guys and to be in the presence and be on a panel with such incredible people, not just producers, but people like John Ziller and Ashley Tarr, Mike Colburn, and especially Jimmy Spildenner. He was an inspiration to me when I was getting started because he was the guy who was out there that was really killing it and making things happen. So again, I'm grateful to be on here. But to Jimmy's point and John's point, I think it's so important that you got to look at this like a business, right? And I appreciate you talking about how I, went out and wrote $85,000 in 6 weeks and how I was able to do this my first month and everything else. But I don't know if it was as much as a goal where I was like, I'm going to do this, to where it was a have to. And I think you heard a lot of people, all of our backs were against the wall. So we had our, ego, we had to put in our back pocket because we didn't have a chance to try to figure it out, like you said. So my thing was just, what are the top people doing and how much money are they spending on leads and how many appointments are they running a week and how many dollars are they making? And if I could just do what they did, I could get their results. But, if I could double what it took to do $10,000 a month to make $10,000 a month, I can make $20,000 a month. So I really think it comes down to perspective. And my perspective was coming from a sales background and the last business I was in, where I was making an incredible income and it was gone and it dissipated and I had to go try to replace it, was the fact that you could actually buy your production, right? Where you could go out there. It wasn't like, oh, I have to buy leads. It was like, how many leads can I buy? How many people can I spend money on to talk to that have an interest in the product that I'm selling? Because I was taught if you can spend 90% of your time closing, which I know we don't really close here, versus 90% of your time prospecting, trying to find qualified candidates to present your product or service to, where would your income be? So when I figured out there was people who filled out a form or went online or whatever the case may be, back then it was just filling out a form, who had an interest where they got something in the mail, junk mail, let's call it what it is. They ruffled through it, they opened it up, they read it, showed it to their wife or their spouse or their husband, filled it out, walked down to the mailbox, licked the stamp, put it back in there to send it back. That was someone that had a strong interest, right? So getting started, I knew two things. I'm able to buy my production.
Oh, why does that happen to me?
Purchase my learning
When
curve.
I see blood, especially on you, I get this
believe,
like
and this isn't the case for all business, this business is that I've never seen somebody sit with 10 people a week who wasn't profitable. I've never seen someone who consistently sat with 10 people a week who didn't make money doing it. So if I was learn, if one man or woman can do it, so can I. If there's 1,000 men or women doing it, what's my problem? It's just my learning curve. And some people's learning curve will be like this. My learning curve, unfortunately, in most businesses was like this. And then finally went up there, and other people come out of the gates and they shoot out of the gates. So I had experience with the learning curve. And a lot of times, though, the struggle was you go broke when your learning curve is doing this before it goes like this. Here, I could out-purchase that learning curve. So if I was struggling, I'd just buy more leads. Buy more leads, talk to more people, and sit in front of more people, because I really, truly believe if you sit with 10 people, there's 3 of them, right? And I always kind of say a joke. I said if you tie a note around a dog's neck and it was cute enough and it didn't bark at him or bite him and it had an insurance license and you sent that dog into 10 homes, it's going to bring back 3 applications, because there's at least 3 people out there who just want the product. They don't know where to get it, or they would have called their insurance guy, whatever the case may be. And you have a license, they don't, and they just want it. And as long as you don't mess it up or say something to offend them, you're going to get 3 out of 10. And then your skills that you would develop and start evolving will get you those 5 apps, 6 apps, 7 apps. Now people are writing, they'll sit with 10 people and bring home 15 applications. So my biggest thing was I can buy my production, I can out-purchase my learning curve, so to speak. And the second thing was I knew I needed to create a story. I needed to come out of the blocks and create a story, because people are always going to ask you how much, how fast. How long you been doing this? How much money you made? How long you been doing this? How much money you made? I know, Matt, you mentioned about lead by example. Well, I had about 30 people I recruited into the business that were in licensing before I got my license. So when I got my license, I knew there was 30 eyes. Actually, it'd be 60, right? There's 2 eyes per person, right? So 60 eyes looking at me going, what's Nate going to do? So I figured out, I got to figure out how to make this work. And when I first bought my set of leads, I didn't have any A leads. I bought all bonus leads, and I had 70 leads. I remember calling, I dialed probably about 20 to 24 hours. I got lost track of how many little tally marks I made. But there were probably 500, 600, 700 dials, and I only had 3 appointments. And I called you up, Matt and Brad. I remember putting you on a conference call, and I said, hey, can I buy more leads? And you guys kind of chuckled and laughed and said, well, of course. Because I knew, hey, if I just get better, there's other people having success on these leads. There's other people having success on their phone. There's other people having success at home. If I can just get more practice and more practice and more practice, eventually I'm going to figure it out. And that's what I love about this business, is that you have the ability to, especially now with the lead flow and everything else, that I'm never going to run out of people to talk to. And as long as I have people to talk to, I can sharpen and develop my skills. And so with a little bit of coaching, actually a lot of coaching, and help from you and upline, at the time, I bought another set of leads and I booked 6 more appointments. And then my first week went out and wrote $15,000. So I love what you said, John and Jimmy, about it's a business, right? And you got to have the perspective of, I have an opportunity to buy leads of people who have an interest in what I'm doing. And I have the ability to out-purchase my learning curve, instead of in most cases where you have to work through your learning curve and go broke while you're doing it. Here, I have an opportunity to actually talk to the people that have an interest in what we're selling, which is great. And the story is so important, because people look at you. No one asked me when I did my third, what did you do your 3rd month and 7th day in the business? No, that story I knew coming out of the gates, because I learned that prior to this business is that facts tell and stories sell, right? No one ever, your parents sit down at night and read you bedtime facts. "Hey, Nate, Columbus discovered America in 1492 and the square root of pi." They didn't do that, right? They read stories. So I knew if I created that story, I could use that story for recruiting. I could use that story for inspiring other people. I could use that story for the rest of my career, which I constantly be able to use that story by coming out of the gates fast. I think that's what's awesome and what Symmetry's done now with this Fast Track program. Unbelievable. I mean, I wish we would have had that, Jimmy, right? Ashley, I mean, you can imagine having that Fast Track program when we got started. I mean, literally to go out there and to be able to make $12,500 in bonuses and plus trips to all-inclusive trips your first 90 days by just doing what it is that we should be doing already. I mean, on top of what you could create without that, and then now having a Fast Track put together, I mean, it's endless opportunities right now. So I appreciate it again for having me on here, guys.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I experienced personally, and then I've also seen as I've coached a lot of top producers, there's two main types of people that come into the business, and Nate represents one. Probably all of us represent one. The other type is going to be someone that is more hesitant, that approaches this very cautiously, kind of dipping a toe in the water, seeing how it works. And Danny Young, my mentor, calls them gatherers. They spend all of their time just trying to gather data, gather information, gather product knowledge. They study all the underwriting guides, and they gather all of this knowledge about the product, but knowledge is never what sells. We talk about that all the time. It is the human connection that sells. And so what I see is people actually get in their own heads quite a bit. Plus they're stagnant. Neither one of those things is going to make money. What Nate did so well was he was bold in his investment. He banked on himself, really, is what he did. He saw that the system worked, the leads work, so it became an equation of buying to produce, buying his production. But the other thing that went with that is he was aggressive in how he dove in to the system, because he could have banked on himself, bought all the leads, and still not produced like that if he had been unwilling to do the massive activity before he understood everything. And I think I probably made more mistakes in production than anyone in this row, but that's also why I was good as quick as I was. And I know I told you this a minute ago, but I wrote one carrier the first 6 months I was in the business, and I wrote over 200,000 in the first 6 months I was in the business with one carrier. And so it astounds me when people come in and they'll use the fact that we have 20, 30, 40, 90 carrier, however many carriers we have now, to say that I can't start fast until I know. It's just an excuse. This system here is so incredibly simple. And so honestly, that's how I get people started now, is I ask them not to write with more than one or two carriers, because it simplifies it. It provides clarity, and clarity empowers. Confusion is going to slow people down every time. And we don't need anyone else to confuse us in this business. We can confuse ourselves really easily. And so it's difficult, because when we feel afraid, we're going to want to protect. And so we're going to want to gather information instead of just jumping in. But for those of you listening, if you can discipline yourself to really lean into that fear and lean into the risk and the unknown, everything that's worth it is going to come on the other side of risk anyway. And so because this is a business, Jimmy, like you were saying, it's going to work the same way that other businesses do. And the people that succeed the most are also going to be the ones that risk the most.
It's so good. Really good.
We've got a relatively new bonus that's, I think we came out with it back in August of last year, the Fast Track bonus.
Yeah.
And it was specifically designed to do what you're talking about. We've got a couple, Debbie and Adam Jr., I think they were the first ones to actually qualify for this Fast Track bonus. And what they did is basically forces you to focus on 4 carriers. And so they did exactly what you're doing. Their first month, they focused on one carrier until they qualified for that bonus. And then they moved on to the second carrier, and then they moved on to the third carrier, and to the fourth carrier. And so after 4 months, they knew those products now. And so that's designed to be that way. So I love that.
We should talk about that Fast Track bonus a little bit, because it's like, incredible what the new agents have to be able to get started quick.
It is.
Trips and like so much money, and I'm like,
Yeah.
where was all this when I came through?
Exactly. And if you're, and like what Nate's saying, the importance of creating a story early on, what that does is it's just, they earned an extra $12,500 of bonuses on top of the probably $30, $40, $50,000 of commissions that they earned. And then on top of that, they earned the Symmetry trip to Costa Rica.
Which is
So,
priceless.
talk about early success. And that's what you really want as a new producer, is to create these early wins, to create that confidence, to create that story. And so that's probably the best thing I would suggest to a new agent, is to look at that as a guide on what you should be doing your first 90 to 120 days.
I want to close that down with one thing, because there is something where people are here for years, and it's like we talk about getting started and creating that story, but that story doesn't have to come at the beginning, right? I mean, the truth is you can create that story at any moment. So it doesn't matter if you've been stagnant here for 2 or 3 years. You made a decision, you had a catalyst, you did something that changed the story, and here's how the story goes from this point on. And so I think that's important to say, just because, yes, there's all kinds of fast act bonuses, and to be honest, I was complaining that it wasn't here when I started, but I wouldn't have probably gotten it. I was very slow to start, so maybe, I don't know, maybe that incentive, but the truth is that you can recreate that story or rewrite that story at any given point. And so, because we all got people on our teams that are, oh, it's over, my story's not. No, your story starts today. And yeah.
So one of the things I've noticed from agents, they always want to know what's the secret to going from 10,000 to 40,000. They're looking for those little nuggets that are maybe the things that they're doing in the home that aren't right or aren't, or that are wrong. And what I've noticed, the biggest difference that can take somebody from a mediocre producer to an elite producer is really the resources and the activity. The other things can be learned over time. As they get more activity, they're going to get better on the phone. They're going to get better in the home. They're going to learn all those little details. But you can't, like the saying, I think it was Casey says, you can't steer a parked car. And so if you're not taking all that activity, you're never really going to learn what it takes. And so, John, I'd like to learn from you. You're a numbers guy. I mean, you really dig into numbers and what it takes for somebody that's maybe average to go to above average. So, the thing I like about this business is you can work backwards.
Yeah.
So we know if you want to write this much business, you got to submit this many apps on average, and you got to, in order to submit this number of apps, you need to have this many sits. In order to have that many sits, you have to set this number of appointments, and you have to buy this many leads. Yeah. So maybe talk about some of those numbers. What does it take in terms of APV to be a $40,000 a month producer? That's $10,000 a week, right? So how many apps, let's work backwards a little bit to figure out the activity and the leads in terms of resources that we would need.
So yeah, and I think too, even kind of before we get into that, just from the standpoint of like, so many people come in here with the fear of failure. Right? And they have that paralysis by analysis where it's like, all right, I just sat with this family and they gave me a decision today. Now I need to know how to overcome decision today. Mm-hmm. And you really don't. Like, so many people get caught up with this idea of like, I need to become an expert at overcoming objections. No, wrong. The best way to handle an objection is before it ever even comes up. So become an expert presenter. Memorize your script. Know your script like the back of your hand. And then, yes, like you said, it's all in the numbers. That's the beauty of this beast, so to speak. You got with 4 keys to a successful week, right? Just double everything, right? I mean, that's all you have to do. One of the things that I found really kind of digging into the numbers that was really beneficial for me, and this is going to be very hard for me to say because I know and understood the mindset when I came in here from an investment standpoint, is, Carl and my uplines, Carl Miller and Ryan Miller, shared with me, they're like, all right, hey, you're going to have to buy some leads. What? What do you mean buy leads, right? Like, I was just so green, I didn't know anything about it. And obviously people are like, this is a blessing to be able to buy leads. And I was scared, I was nervous, I didn't know. And so I'm like, all right, hey, look, I got $250. like, that's all I had. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was already so much in credit card debt, what was another $250? But it's crazy is that, like, diving into that idea, it's like, all right, so $250 actually ended up getting me like $2,500 in annual premium volume, right? And so then the next week I went and spent $300, and then that got me $3,000 in annual premium volume. had I not experienced that, I would have been so afraid to just part with the money. But you know, they talk about this like activity eats skill set for lunch, right? And you do just legitimately have to trust the numbers. So if you want to write $10,000 in annual premium volume, you have to spend $1,000 in a week. But what does that mean from you for an income standpoint? Are you always going to be out $1,000 every week? No, because you're turning around and reinvesting those dollars that you're getting from the commission. So I don't know if that kind of answered your question or not. I know we've done a few different.
Yeah, so you can extrapolate. Some people, their goal isn't to write $40,000 a month. It might be to write $20,000 or $10,000. So you can kind of figure out what kind of income are you looking to make. And like you said, it's about 10 times. Whatever you invest in leads, it doesn't matter if it's bonus leads, it doesn't matter if it's A leads. In general, it's about...
That's insane for business costs, by the way.
Yeah,
10%.
10%.
Business costs, that's insane.
Yeah, and so a lot of people, in fact, I was talking to a new agent, and he was probably 5 or 6 months into the business, and he's just not getting the results that he's looking for. And I said, the first question I asked was, how much are you investing in leads? And he said, well, I don't have a lot to invest. I'm investing about $100 a week. And so what are you expecting to get out of that? And he said, well, I'd love to submit 5,000 a week. That'd be great. And I said, well, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. The amount of money that you're investing in leads, you're going to write about 1,000 a week. What are you submitting? And he said, it's about 1,200. I said, okay, great. You're actually above average. You've got to be able to reinvest some of that. And his mindset, and this is probably a lot of people, especially if you don't come from a business background, he's thinking, well, that's money that's coming off the table, you know, for food and for mortgage and car payments. And I said, well, it's actually not. If you had $100 and every time you put into an ATM, it spit out 1,000, how many $100 bills would you put in there? Yeah. And he said, as many as I could. And I said, no, you wouldn't, because that's money off the table. That's money for your mortgage and your car payments. Well, no, because it's an investment. I said, exactly. Yeah. If you don't have that mindset where I cannot steal from my business and use the money that I need for leads to pay my mortgage and my car payments. That was hard for me because I had no money. I had no money at all. And yeah, it'd be easy to fall into that trap. But if you want to consistently produce, you have to have consistent resources. You've got to reinvest.
That's the fuel for everything, right? I mean, it really is. Like I kind of used an analogy, whatever it was, just I think last week. And I love it so much. It's like, so here's what we're going to do, right? We're in Knoxville right now. I have a personal jet sitting outside, and I say, hey, we're going to fly to California. And you have your bags packed. You go up to the plane, and you're like, all right. And I say, hold on a second. Before you get on the plane, there's something I got to tell you. It normally takes a full tank to get us from here to California, but I have a half a tank. Okay, but I have a really good plan. I'm going to get us up. You normally have to fly at 36,000 feet. I'm going to get us up to 46,000. I'm going to shut off the engines, let it come down to 26,000 feet, kick the engines back up, right, just to conserve fuel, and I'm going to continue this process. Now, there's an emergency landing here, and there's another one, you know, in Arizona. So if we do happen to run out of gas, I hope we can hit the emergency landing. Like, how confident would you feel getting on my plane?
Not confident.
I wouldn't get on the dang thing at all, right? Why? Because I don't have enough fuel to get us to our destination.
Right.
Your leads are the exact same thing in this business. If you're not investing every single week, why do you want me to trust your business plan? Right? Like, why do you want me to trust your idea of getting to California, if that makes sense?
Right. That's great. Now, in terms of activity, were you going to add something?
Well, I have something that may help from a mindset perspective around investing for new agents, because I think all of us were broke when we started. I was negative broke. And so, you know, money for me was something that I could have looked at as the reason I couldn't. Mm-hmm. You know, I could have looked at my inability to purchase leads as the reason that this wouldn't work for me, or the reason that I couldn't start it as fast as I wanted to. But I was listening to someone the other day, and they said something that really changed my perspective on a completely different situation, but I think it applies here. We're not limited by what we don't have. We're limited by what we do. Because we've been trained to think about, to look at what we have and go, is it in my bank account? Is it in my skill set? Is it in my experience? Is it in my network? And we allow that to make our decision of whether or not we do something. I think if I'm a new agent and I know this is where I'm supposed to be, or I know that I can do this, and I see that it's a vehicle that can get me where I want to go, then all I have to do is walk forward and trust, because I do have an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset that would limit me by what I've done before or what I have right now. What I have right now is not going to get me where I want to go. And if you're new, that's true for you too. So we have to stop judging what we will and won't invest based on what we invested prior or what we feel like we can invest right now, and choose to invest based on what we know we can accomplish in the future.
So good.
And I think if we stop allowing ourselves to be limited by what we have, that will change everything. Because doors will open that never would have opened if we hadn't started walking forward. And I'm just telling you, if this is where you know you're supposed to be, then it doesn't matter what the obstacle is. Like the system, the team, the people is big enough to take care of the rest of it if you will just start walking.
I think one thing I would say is an average producer, I think, fails a lot of times to realize how important consistency is.
Yep.
And so we're talking about resources. And if you remain consistent in filling up your resources, it gives you the opportunity to remain consistent in your activity, which results in consistency in your own results, the production. But if you aren't consistent in your resources, you're going to be all over the place with activity, and then you're going to be on that roller coaster with your results.
What do they say? It's like letting your activity dictate your checkbook, not your checkbook dictate your activity, or something along those lines. Yeah. That's exactly what
I do. I think it's really important to remain very consistent in what we can invest initially, and that is resources that allows you to produce the activity that's necessary.
It's like go out and make a mess, right? Like just go make a mess. Don't have that paralysis by analysis. That's what I tell people all the time. Is like, look, if it takes you 5 months to sit with 50 families, you're probably not going to be here, right? But if you sit with 50 families in 5 weeks, we're going to have a really good shot at this thing and probably a long career together.
I want to talk about activity for a second. You're talking about consistency in your activity. Let's say someone has enough resources, and a lot of people say, well, how many dials do I need to make? And one thing I've noticed about an elite producer is they don't really care about the number of dials. They care about the number of appointments. And for some people, that might be 250 dials. For other people, it might be 500 dials. I know, John, you were saying the other day you used to make about 800 dials a week.
No, more.
Oh, more.
Yeah. The phone was so heavy. Yes.
Okay, 800,000 dials a week, but you were number one in the company. Number one in the company. Wrote, I think it was over $500,000 that year.
Number one.
And you didn't stop at 250 dials. Your focus was 20 to 30 appointments a week, because you knew that maybe 50% of those would actually show up, especially if you're doing virtual, maybe 50% show up. And so if you need 15 apps to get 10,000 a week in production, you're going to set 20 to 30 appointments, and you're not going to worry about the number of dials. And I'd love to have you expand on consistency. You talked about schedule. And I think that's probably another really big differentiator between an average producer and an elite producer, is the consistency in your schedule. And maybe actually you can join in on this too, because you're also somebody that every week you were on the top of the leaderboards. I mean, you were like a machine. You were so consistent. And so I'd love to hear from you guys on that side of it. And also, what are some of the things that you would not compromise on in this business that were just so important that you would not compromise on them?
I think whatever you let get into your calendar, whatever you decide dictates priority on your calendar. And if you don't, then someone else's priorities are going to be
drama
on your
blank
calendar.
spaces.
Right, right. So whatever you allow on your calendar is going to dictate the type of results that you have. And so if you can remain very consistent with kind of putting boundaries around what gets on the calendar. I've always believed that an effective producer will control the first 2 hours of their day, because no one really dials at 5 to 7 in the morning. I mean, I don't know that I've heard of anyone dialing then. So you've got to get your own personal development time in to grow yourself the first part of the day. That's got to be a priority. That to me is a non-negotiable. Okay, and then making sure that you have times that the primary focus is dialing. It's not, I'm going to try to dial at this time. It's okay, 10 o'clock to 12 or 12 to 2, whatever the time frame is. I'm in gear 5. I'm only focused on dialing. I'm going to shut down all the other distractions. If you're dialing out of the house, it's letting your family know how best to support you. Hey, I need your help to make sure you keep the kids out of the room, make sure you keep distractions down so that I can get this activity done. Because without meetings on the calendar, you can't go see anyone. It's just not going to happen, right? And the other thing I would say is, as far as calendar is concerned and schedule, is just make sure that you're also prioritizing your family time. Because as an elite producer, you are going to be drained a lot more. You're going to have a lot of emotional energy. It takes a lot of your own emotional space to sit down with 12 to 15 people.
Yeah.
So you've got to be consistent across the whole day of your schedule, that you schedule time with your family, you schedule time to recharge, you schedule time for phoning, and you schedule enough time to make sure you can be present with the people that you're supposed to be present with.
Yeah, it's really good. So much similarity, I would say. I think just like Mike said, for me, 2 things that I would not compromise on whatsoever were my spiritual life and my physical well-being. So for me, that means quiet time, personal time, first thing in the morning, early, get that knocked out. It also fills me up for the day. Right. So I have something to give. I think a lot of people aren't effective in the home because they don't have anything to give to the people that they're either on the Zoom screen with or meeting in a home. And then physically, I'm not super happy with myself when I'm not in great shape. And that's something important to me, taking care of myself. And so for me, I could either choose to let that be dictated by the rest of my life, or I could choose to put that as a priority, again, because it does fill me up to some extent. And so the thing with that, though, if I was going to prioritize that and produce at a high level, it had to happen early. And so whether it means 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning to make it happen, I'm getting up to make sure that I have those 2-3 hours of personal development and getting a workout in so that I'm at 100% for the day. And you could argue that's exhausting. It's more exhausting to operate a full workday on empty, I would argue. Right. The schedule, though, of this business, I actually think it's hard to say between that and activity which one is more important. But I think the thing that fascinates me when new people begin or when they just want to level up is this misconception that you can handle it like any other work that you would do and expect a different result. So people come here and they see the large numbers on the stage, on the screen that you can make, and they assume because we can put those blocks in our time whenever we want to, that they can just show up to their week and do whatever they want whenever they want. And it's chaos is what that is. It's not productive. It's certainly not going to lead to elite production. No. And so getting disciplined with your schedule, actually bringing order into all of the space, it does prevent drama, Jimmy, like you said, but it also, for me, it freed me mentally to have to decide every hour on the hour or every 30 minutes, what am I going to do next? What do I need to be doing now? What's my top priority now? What phone calls do I take? What do I not take? When you live by a schedule, you don't have to spend any of your time thinking about that.
That's great.
You can arrive at Monday morning and everything is listed for you, just like you show up at a job and all of your responsibilities are listed for you. And so you do them and you get paid. The same thing works here. You put those things in your calendar. The beautiful thing is we get to decide what we want in the calendar, but we still have to put them in there. Then we show up, we work our calendar, and we get paid. It's really brilliant how it works the same way, and we're going to get paid a lot more than we would if we were working for somebody else. But I think just the commitment to the discipline of that, when I was in the field, which I was full-time for 6 years, I worked the same schedule for 6 years. the exact same schedule.
There's that consistency again.
Yes.
Right?
Like if I went on vacation, this is what I did. And if you want to produce at a high level, this is what you have to do. You have to front load and back load. You have to plan for it. Otherwise, your production will dip. And so if I knew I was going on a carrier trip or taking time off for whatever reason, then I would put more appointments the week before and more appointments the week after so that I wasn't stressed on vacation about my bank account, my production,
I would also
numbers,
guarantee
whatever.
that if somebody showed up at your house on a random Friday night and you had already planned, you're getting up at 4 o'clock on Saturday, that
Yeah.
you weren't doing anything unless it was
Exactly.
planned. I'm not going out.
Yeah.
Like it's 3 years in a row, never went out on a Friday night, not one time.
Yeah.
And people don't make those sacrifices. It's exactly what you were just saying. 6 years they're doing the same thing to have the life that you get to live. Anybody that knows that life would trade that,
Yeah.
But the people that don't make those sacrifices, they're not making those.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, a lot of people think that the way you become elite producer is by getting better at all the different products available, all the different advanced markets, the annuities, the IULs, all the advanced planning type stuff. But if you look at the leaderboards, I think probably in every case, just about every case, they are focusing on mortgage protection, or they're focusing on final expense, or they're getting good at one thing. It doesn't mean that you're ignoring the other opportunities, but I'd like for you guys to talk about how, I'm going to say the elite producers are the professionals, and everyone else is maybe not amateurs, but they're not the professionals. And so what I've noticed is that professionals use tools and resources to become more effective at what they do. And it doesn't matter what career it is. If you think of we're building a house right now, and there are certain tools that an expert's going to use compared to somebody who doesn't really build a house. And same here, we've got tools, resources that help us become more efficient, more effective. And so when if you're making your dials, you might use the Power Dialer. You're going to leverage the Virtual Mentor to help understand what products to write, but you're also going to leverage a team of experts. If you identify maybe a potential annuity, you don't necessarily have to become an expert at annuities. You're going to leverage a team to help you become more effective and efficient at what you do. So I'd love for you guys to talk about that.
So I have learned recently that there are two ways that we need to function in business. There's thinking work and there's feeling work. There's thinking, and then there's doing work. I stated that wrong. And the doing work is what we've been talking about. Like, you got to go out and do the dials, you got to do the appointments, you got to do all these things. I think what a lot of times we forget is we have to reflect and think about how that work has been done. And when you do that, you find areas of weakness, you find areas of inefficiencies in your business. Tools, I believe, are designed to help in areas of inefficiency. It's supposed to drive profitability. So, for instance, one example would be the dialer, for example. If you're wanting to set more appointments and you're not as good, the phone feels a little heavier. I know it did for me. I had to actually put a $5 bill on the back of, well, they don't have the rotary dialers anymore, but I had to actually mentally think about every time I picked up the phone, I was actually making money. The beauty of a tool like the dialer, for example, is that it takes that inefficiency and makes it profitable because it's constantly dialing. You don't have to think about it. The same is true with a lot of the tools that Symmetry is putting out through the Quility platform. Mm-hmm. That's supposed to help create proficiencies in your business where you aren't as good. And I think what we sometimes miss as business owners is we don't spend enough time reflecting on the activity, doing the hard work of analyzing, okay, what did I do good here? Where can I get better here? So that I can use tools to be more efficient so that when I go do the work, I'm more profitable.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I think the thing that you were really kind of like, the one of the problems here is people want to get so advanced, and the truth is you just get advanced at the basics.
Exactly.
You get better at the basics. The more you're here, you get better at the basics. Tools are great. The abilities that we have to help people are incredible. We have so many things that we can utilize to help people in a home. It's unbelievable what we can do to help people right now with Quility and with all the resources that we have. But the truth is so many people want to start learning about annuities and IULs and all this stuff and the big elephant hunting deals. And the truth is meat and potatoes, simplicity, get back to the basics, get advanced at your basics, and you're going to win.
Yep.
I think that's really kind of what you were.
Exactly. And I'm gonna turn it over to you, Nate, for this next question, because it's kind of tying into what you're saying, is that really the biggest difference in terms of how we do things is we, as elite producers, we master the basics. We're not mastering everything. We're mastering the basics. And so, Nate, I want to hear from you on what are some of those basic things that you think that you see a lot of agents maybe undervalue or they don't really focus on, that you would actually maybe put a little bit more of an emphasis on, that you think can really drive that difference?
Yeah, Matt, I think, Jimmy nailed it on the head. Get advanced at the basics. Ashley talked about it earlier where she wrote one product for 6 months. I wrote two for the first year and a half involved in the business. I think what Vince Lombardi came out every football season and said, gentlemen, this is a football. And I spent so many years in my career prior to this business thinking I needed that one missing piece, that one closing line, that one thing, that special nugget that was going to help me. And then I started to realize is that we have all the tools necessary to go out there and write as much business as we want. When I got started in business, the only training I really had was I had a one sheet that said getting started from Edward Pritchett, which was download the software, because we had the download software on our computer, print out applications, practice writing one on yourself, order business cards, and listen to this audio that Casey Watkins did on In the Home. And I listened to it over and 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 over again, like literally hundreds of times, because I figured out, hey, if Casey Watkins had the success that he did in the field, and I could just say what he said, I could have that same success, right? So when you're doing this business, guys, again, Jimmy, I love what you said. Get advanced at the basics. Master the basics, And we don't have to go through all of it, guys. I think most of you guys have learned it on the conference calls, and you've heard it in the fast track training or on Quility's getting started section of the business. But, building rapport in the home, that's basic, right? Finding an area of commonality that you can talk to. But I think a lot of people think, oh, that's a step. I'm going to go in and build rapport. Well, I think it'd be a little strange if I walked to my doctor, I have a sore throat, and he sat down and said, hey, pull up a chair. How's your son? And your son plays basketball? My son plays basketball. And for like 15 minutes, he sat there and started talking to me. I'd kind of be like, well, can you stick that thing in my mouth where I'm almost choked, when you put it in there, and look at my throat and see what's going on? Because I have a sore throat, doc. Like, I'm here to get help, right? So the thing is that you want to build rapport, but you want to build rapport throughout the entire presentation, right? Another simple thing that I was taught, which a lot of people don't do, is you got to smile, right? Smile. It's amazing what a smile will do to people. Some people I look at and I talk to, and they're just, eye contact, look straight in their eyes. You don't want to stare at them where it gets really weird, but, just have eye contact, smile, nod. These are simple things that sounds really, really funny, but this helped me make hundreds of thousands of dollars in this business my first year is just by smiling. Imagine how great it's going to be able to feel that when I leave here today, that your family's never going to have to worry about having a financial difficulty in case one of them were to pass away or heart attack, stroke. That's going to feel pretty awesome, isn't it? And I'm nodding, I'm smiling, and they're nodding, and they're smiling. Just basic stuff, guys. We could spend an hour going through this stuff, but I think the biggest takeaway, Matt, would be is that don't think that you need to know all this stuff, right? I never sold an IUL, Jimmy, to your point, for, it was like 2 years until I was in the business where I actually first did my first IUL. I wrote 2 products, basically, and I learned those products. I understood their underwriting guidelines, and I learned them, and all of our products are so similar. I know there's different products for different situations and everything else that you can kind of pivot to if you need to, but, you can get 2 or 3 products that can pretty much cover 99% of all of the cases that you're dealing with. That is an incredible product, incredible company, to be able to help protect their family. That's really what we're doing. So don't get too distracted by, as they say, all the shiny different objects or Jimmy, you talked about elephants, right? I was taught, make sure you're shooting the rabbits while you're, hunting the elephants, so to speak, because that is the meat and potatoes, to your point, Jimmy. That is the daily income that we need to get every single day, whether it's mortgage protection, whether it's final expense, whatever it is that you're specializing in. Stick with it, get advanced at those basics, master those basics, and you'll have tremendous success.
Okay, I have one last question for you guys as we wrap up. What's one tip that each of you guys would have, maybe something that we haven't talked about so far that would help somebody that's either getting started or maybe they're just not getting the results that they want? What's one thing that maybe helped you guys go from being an average producer to an elite producer?
Yes.
I guess we'll start with you, Ashley.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is change your perspective on failure. Be extremely quick to fail fast, fail early, fail often. That's the way that we grow. Brene Brown says that innovation is actually achieved through fail, iterate, fail, iterate. And so failure should not be something that we look at as a negative. It is in our culture, but failure is required for success. It's actually a stepping stone in that. And so fail super early, make a ton of mistakes. I know we all did, and we're all here. So that should tell you something.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Right. I would say run your own race, right? Like I had such a terrible time comparing constantly, especially and I think that's what made it worse on the phones for me is because I'm literally on a text message string with Miranda Martin, who's tackling her 15 appointments in 3 hours, right? And it's taking me 24 hours of dialing, right, to get the same results that she's getting. So I'd say run your own race, put your blinders on and do what you do, right? And don't worry about what other people are doing. I wish I would have kind of really honed in on that early. And then track your numbers. Like if you don't know your numbers, you don't have a business. I've heard so many people say that and it holds true. Wholeheartedly track your numbers, right? Track your dials, your contacts, your appointments, how much money you're spending on leads, how many dials you're making per hour, how much of your business is getting issued, and then you'll get to a point to where you can become more efficient, right? And efficiency is key, especially when you go to start building a team. But be my two.
There's so many things that I want to say here. One of the things that Ashley was talking, I think, was so powerful, and I don't know how much it was received, but talking about the schedule and talking about if it's not in your schedule, it's not going to happen. Drama will fill up. I used to think you take 30 minutes on Sunday. I used to plan every door knock in my calendar. I used to be so, like she said, I didn't want to think. If you think about what you're doing in the field, you're wasting an hour. I guarantee it. If you think what you're doing in the field, you're wasting an hour. So when I'm going from appointment to appointment, I had every door knock laid out. If I spend 30 or 45 minutes on Sunday planning my week, it saved me 3 hours, I would say, during the week. The other thing that John really hit home with is the numbers is you don't get beat by the one thing that you can control.
Yeah.
And that's your numbers. Fall in love with the activity, not the results. If you can be somebody that pays attention to the success, the win or fail is if I make $250, not if I write 3,000, 4,000, because that's going to come. But if you fall in love with the activity instead of the results in the beginning, and I'm talking about everything that you can control, that's your win or fail. And the last thing is, I might have just went blank, but the last thing is, I don't remember.
I think it's like we do more, right? I think for an elite producer.
Yeah, you got it. So everyone, I always laugh at this title, like, how do you become elite producer? And that's people that aren't even writing $10,000 a month yet. And they're sitting in an elite producer, $40,000 a month. The truth is, how you become elite producer is you figure out how to be a $10,000 a month producer, and then you times it by 4.
Yeah, that's good.
Or if you're worse, times it by 6, like me. Like whatever, if you had to overcompensate. But yeah, sorry.
It can't be that easy, Jimmy. No, it really is. I would say, again, you could say a lot of things in this, but probably the one main item that drove production for me to take me from just a basic 10,000, 15,000 to an elite producer is every single time something fell off my calendar, an appointment fell off, my mindset was, I'm going to schedule 2 more. So it already, back to what you were saying, right? I already know that which I can't control, if someone cancels on me or porches me or vorches me, as we say now in the video conference world, right? If they cancel on me, I already know what I'm going to do. I don't have to think about what should I be doing. Get on the phone, schedule 2 more, I'm done. It's a win. And that really drives that focus on keeping the appointments. So that's what I would say.
Thank you guys so much. I think it's been an awesome panel. Hopefully it's been very beneficial to you guys. Let's go out and become elite producers.